Hi guys, Mr. Waffles here. This is going to be a fairly lengthy video because I'm doing my utmost to clear up all of the community's confusion regarding the mystery cutscene file in the Black Ops 3 game files, because I've now posted 2 videos on the subject, one being very hopeful, one debunking to an extent, and now people are very confused. They're saying, Milo, some people have said this, others have said that. What's going on? I want an explanation. And so in this video, I'm going to be running through all of the facts. I'm also going to be talking to the people that have supposedly got into the actual files themselves and looked at that mystery cutscene that none of us have been able to get into. And generally, I'm going to do my absolute best to try and explain what is going on. Because I've spent a lot of time on this today, I've done no uni work, I've been pouring all my efforts into making this video because I really think that some clarity is needed so the community can stop tearing its own hair out. We got too close to the radioactive beacon, guys. It was not a good idea. So let's start with the basic facts and the basic rundown of what has happened so far. If you've seen my last 2 videos, you'll know that Treyarch added some new files into the Black Ops 3 game files on PC. Obviously, Revelations had just released on PC and Xbox, and so they had added in all of the Revelations files, and there were 2 files in there that stood out. They were in the video directory of the Black Ops 3 files, and the reason they stood out is that they were actually encrypted. We couldn't open them, they were mysteries. One of them was the Genesis, which is Revelations, outro, so it was the cutscene that plays when you finish the regular Easter egg for the first time, or for any time really. You finish the Easter egg, it plays a rendered video, and that is the video that was in there called Genesis outro. Sorted. Fine. It's encrypted, we can't play it ourselves, but the game can play it because the game can decrypt it, and so there's no worries. However, the other file was just called ZM Genesis, and it wasn't the intro, because the intro was in the files under a different name, and it wasn't encrypted, so we can check it, and it's there, it's fine. So there's a third mystery cutscene for Revelations, for Genesis, which is Revelations' codename, that no one knows about. No one knows why it's there, what its purpose is, etc. This caused me to post a video and say, yo, this could be a super Easter egg cutscene file. This could be an alternate ending or something like that. The only problem is that it's the exact same file size as the file for the Shadows of Evil intro cutscene, and so that's just a little bit weird. Why would they be the exact same file size? That sort of thing cannot be a coincidence, surely. Like, that has to be either purposeful or maybe something weird is going on with the Shadows of Evil intro, but I don't know. So I went to bed and left it at that. When I woke up, several things had happened. A guy called Porter, who I know and has done a lot of work in the past on a program called Wraith, which is really, really powerful. It's a tool for extracting things from the memory of Black Ops 3 and essentially giving map makers and modders much more ability to go and take things that Treyarch have made and implement them into their own maps and things like that. It's an amazingly good program, but he tweeted out, I got into the encrypted file. It's an encrypted Shadows of Evil load screen. I just decrypted it. And that was after working with DF from the subreddit and Dr. Lil Robot a little bit as well to explore the data inside the encrypted file. He didn't actually play the video, he didn't actually watch the video, he just got into the data of the file, saw that it exactly matched the Shadows of Evil data, and went, oh, it's Shadows of Evil's intro. Great banter! Fantastic! Blundellballsed everything up. So that's what he tweeted out. He then felt the need to clarify, and so he posted part of his program's code, but not all of it, a part of the program's code for people to see roughly what was going on. He tweeted it out and basically gave it out to everyone and said, this is what I'm doing. People then saw that code and assumed from the wording of his tweet that that was the full program. That was everything that they would need in order to replicate what he had done and get into the encrypted file. But it actually wasn't. It was only part of the program. So there was already a little bit of miscommunication there. Porter should have been clearer, and the other people should probably have asked Porter for clarification before jumping in. But it's been done, it's happened, no one should be blamed for this. What then happened, though, is loads of people got very confused because they tried to use the program that Porter had tweeted out, and it didn't work. Or it gave them garbage data. or it just generally confused matters further, and a Redditor called a user of Ice and Fire made a very critical thread of Porter's code and essentially said, Porter is lying, this is not the case, may the Super Easter Egg hunt continue! So that was what a user of Ice and Fire said. Several other Redditors also made similar threads saying, Porter is lying, he's trolling all of us, he's a filthy liar, he should be burned at the stake. Okay, they maybe didn't quite say that, but they were getting quite angry because they thought Porter was outright lying to them and basically throwing poop in their faces and saying, screw you guys, I know how to code and you don't, and so I'm gonna troll you all. That's what they thought was going on, and that's what I'm trying to investigate in this video. So, the turmoil began, the Reddit went nuclear, and things really got balls up. So, this is where I come in. I woke up, I saw that all of this had happened, and I said, okay, I'm going to take it as my duty right now to do the community a favor, reach out to all the parties involved here, and try and figure out what is going on. Try and establish a little bit of clarity for people that are wondering what on earth is happening in the zombies community right now. So many people are shouting at each other, people are going absolutely crazy, why is it happening? And I want to clear that all up for you today, and essentially pull a little bit of a Dr. Salim. Imagine somewhere calm, imagine somewhere safe, imagine the feeling of finding an actual Super Easter Egg. Ah, the bliss. Okay, let's get down to business. To defeat the Hun. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to work through all of Porter's work and essentially give you guys a result that tells us about the nature of this encrypted file, genesis.mkv. What this investigation does not do is confirm or deny whether or not there is a Super Easter Egg in the game. There could be one, by all means. I'm not disproving anything like that. The Super Easter Egg could well be there. All I'm going to be saying is whether or not the Super Easter Egg will use this particular video, genesis.mkv, as a cutscene file for it to play. That's what this investigation is investigating. So, added into Black Ops 3 on PC were 6 encrypted files. 2 of them were MKVs, which are video containers, so that means that inside that container there is a video file that will be a cutscene of some kind. One was ZM Genesis, this real mystery file, and the other was the ZM Genesis outro, which is the ending for the regular Easter egg that we have all seen a billion times at this point. What to do? What to do? That video. The other 4 were all sound containers. So the MKVs were video containers, and these other 4 files were SABs, which are some of the types of container that Black Ops 3 uses to contain sounds. There are also sables as well, but these 4 were SABs. So 4 SABs and 2 MKVs. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to prove that Porter does have a valid method to decrypt at least part of these encrypted files. He cannot currently decrypt the entire thing. That he cannot do just yet. He is working on it, but he cannot decrypt the entire file. But what he can do is decrypt a chunk from the beginning of the file. And because the SABS files are containers of lots and lots and lots of sounds, potentially thousands of sounds, what he can do is decrypt the first half, for example, and get maybe 1,500 different quotes, different audio files from within the container, even though he hasn't decrypted the full thing. So, to prove, like I said, that his decryption method works, I'm going to play you some audio from those decrypted files. But it's not just going to be any old audio, okay? It's going to be audio that proves that this has indeed been ripped from those decrypted files rather than from just playing it in-game. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to play you something that you will never have heard before. So there is no way that we could have gone in-game, recorded this in-game, and then pretended that this was something that we ripped and decrypted from the files. This is totally new. It's from the decrypted files. Here you go.
Max ammo. Bonus points. Carpenter. Double points. Fire sale. Insta-kill. Minigun.
So, what you just heard was Dr. Monty as the announcer for Revelations. Now, to the best of my knowledge, that has not been found so far. Nobody knows about a way to turn Monty into the announcer. Could that be related to the super Easter egg? Maybe. Like, that would be amazing. It's in the encrypted files, and so why would Treyarch encrypt these? Maybe they wanted to hide it from us. Maybe that's because it's for a super Easter egg. That's possible. I will be posting a full breakdown of my thoughts on those in a separate video, but for now, that at least proves that Porter has a method to take an encrypted file, do some voodoo magic, and then decrypt part of it, get some stuff out, and that stuff just so happens to be extremely interesting Dr. Monty quotes in this case.
Kaboom!
So, now that you know that the decryption method works, what I'm going to be doing is showing you that in the context of the MKVs. It's all well and good us doing it with the sound files, the SABs, but we need to do them with the MKVs in order to actually figure out what the hell is in that mystery genesis.mkv. Things will get a little bit more complicated here. There's not much I can do about that, I do apologize, but what I have done is spent the last 5 or 6 hours working on this video and getting everything clear with Porter and with 1 or 2 other people, with Little Robot, etc., in order to try and create the most concise and, I guess, best possible walkthrough I possibly could of this process. It's going to be difficult, but please bear with me. I will do my best to explain things, and we will get to the result at the end of whether or not this is indeed just a troll, or whether it's actually not a troll, whether Porter was telling the truth, and this is indeed just the Shadows of Evil intro cutscene, as he stated on Twitter. The first thing I need to show you is the XOR function, that's XOR, XOR, and it's going to be used throughout the decryption process, so that's why I need to show you how it works. XORing is almost like a different version of addition. So if you have a number, let's call it A, and you add it to another number, which we'll call B, you get an output result. Similarly, if you XOR 2 numbers together, you'll get an output result. So, as you can see here, this is our XOR truth table, which is essentially a table of results that are always true, hence truth table, and we can use this to look up what the results are for different XOR calculations. So, A XOR B gives you A XOR B, okay? 0 XOR 0 gives you 0. 0 XOR 1 gives you 1. 1 XOR 0 gives you 1. And 1 XOR 1 gives you 0. So these results will always be true, and we can use these always true results in this truth table just here to do other XORs and find other results. I've got an example written here that we're going to be doing in order to fully understand this process. Now, the first thing I want to say is that you might be a little uncomfortable with this because these are not written in decimal. This number here, 00001001, is actually the number 9. But it's written in only 1s and 0s. Now, I'm not going to go into the specifics of this now. If you haven't seen this before, it's binary. It's not very complicated. I encourage you to do some online reading about it if you are interested. But for now, just believe me that the decimal, that's base 10, number 9, can also be written in binary as this string of 0s and 1s. We can also write other numbers in binary, so this number here, the decimal 3, can be written in binary with 00000011. That sounds pretty straightforward. We've just written the numbers in a different way. Why do we care? Well, when you XOR 2 numbers together on a computer, what it's going to do is it's going to look at the numbers in binary form, as we can see here, and it's going to XOR them downwards. So it's going to look at this first number in the list, this 0 on the corner here. It's going to look at this 0. It's then going to look at the 0 right below it and say, okay, 0 XOR 0. Let's check our truth table. 0 XOR 0 gives us 0. So the computer will output a 0 there, like that, and it will then keep going along the list. 0 XOR 0 again is 0. 0 XOR 0 again is 0. 0 XOR 0 again is 0. But here we get to 1 XOR 0. So the computer again checks the truth table. It says, okay, 1 XOR 0 gives 1. So we're going to write a 1 here. 0 XOR 0 again is 0. 0 XOR 1, we check the list. 0 XOR 1 is 1. And 1 XOR 1, we check the list again, 1 XOR 1 is 0. There we go. So, as you can see, we have gone from a decimal number 9 here, to a decimal number 3 here, to another number, which is a mystery. And if we look up what this number is, it's actually the decimal number 10. So, 9 XOR 3 gives you 10, if you're writing the numbers in decimal. But that XOR that gives you that, if you're writing the numbers in binary. So, why is this relevant? Why do you need to know this? Well, what we can do, what we can exploit here, is the fact that if we want to go backwards in this process, we can look at, for example, let's say we're going to XOR 9 and 10. We're going to XOR those together and see what happens. So 0 XOR 0 gives us 0, and I'm going to fill that in for all 4 of those because they are all 0 XOR 0 there. Then 1 XOR 1, we look at our truth table, and that gives us a 0, so that's a 0. 0 XOR 0 gives us a 0. 0 XOR 1, 0 XOR 1 gives us a 1. And 1 XOR 0, 1 XOR 0 gives us a 1. And the thing you'll notice is that, remarkably, despite the fact that we started off with 9 and 3, okay, and then we XORed them together, and we got this output here, we can work backwards, and we can say 10 XOR 9 is going to also give us 3. Because if you compare these sets of zeros and then 2 1s is the exact same as what we see down here. So this is the decimal 3. And that is the beauty and the intrigue of the XOR function, is that you can work backwards. Just like if you said a plus b equals c, and then if you did c take away b, you would get a. Except with XOR, you don't need to do a takeaway, you don't do anything like that, you just XOR again. So we XORed 9 with 3 to get 10, and then we XORed 9 with 10 to get back to 3. That's the XOR function. So, as you can see, the XOR function is fairly straightforward once you know exactly what it's doing, and it's quite elegant as well. It's really quite a nice result that you can go from one thing, use the next thing, and get a result, and then go backwards and just do the process again, use the same function, and out will pop that original value. It's pretty cool, but it's also easy to exploit, and that's exactly what Porter has done in his program. So, I'm going to walk you through, step by step, what the program does, and then I'm going to get in a call with Porter, and he's going to show you some code. I'll have that code in the description as well, so that you can see all of this process, and you can actually understand what is happening. I'm now going to walk you through the actual decryption process. Bear with me, I'm going to go nice and slowly and show you how it works. We're going to start off with 2 files on the disk, so that's just in the files. If you're navigating in your File Explorer, you find 2 files that are encrypted. We're going to call those encrypted file 1, as you can see just here, and encrypted file 2 that we can see just here. So we're going to find those on the disk first of all. They're both encrypted, we can't get into them. Then we're going to boot the game, and we're going to hope that one of those files gets loaded into the game's memory, and if it does, it will be decrypted, because for the game to play the file, it needs to be decrypted, and so if it's in memory, it will be in its decrypted form, ready to be played. So you're going to hope that your file gets loaded into memory. If it does, then you're all good, Bob's your uncle, you can move forwards. If it doesn't get loaded into memory, and you cannot find a version of it in memory in decrypted form, then you are screwed. You need to work with different files, okay? So in this case, we're going to assume that we can find one of these files in the memory. So we have 2 encrypted files on the disk, they're on the disk, and we've got one of these in decrypted form in the memory. Now, the key to this is that what we're going to do is dump as it's called, the decrypted file from the memory, which means essentially what we'll do is we'll take the game's memory and we'll save it and write it to a file so that the decrypted data is no longer just in memory, in the game's brain just floating around, it's actually plopped down onto paper on disk. So now we have encrypted file 1 on the disk, encrypted file 2 on the disk, and a dumped decrypted version of the first file. But what we want is a decrypted version of file 2. So this is the desired decrypted file 2. This is what we do not have. This is our target, our end result that we are going for. And what we're going to do to get this is use these 3 files. The first thing we're going to do is XOR 2 of these files together. We're going to XOR these ones, the encrypted file 1 and the dumped version of that same file that is in decrypted form. So we'll XOR those 2 together. Let me write that out quickly. So E1, I'm going to call the encrypted first file, okay? And we're going to XOR that with the decrypted version of that file, and what that will do is it will give us an output that will be different to the 2 components going in. So in the same way that before we said 9 XOR 3 gives us 10, here we're saying E1, the encrypted file 1, XOR D1, this decrypted version of file 1, gives us a result. And that result we are going to refer to as the pseudo key. Okay, so that process, E1 XOR D1, gives us the pseudo key. So that's that XOR that, okay? What we could also do, if we wanted to, is we could say E2, so that's that thing just there, XOR D2, so that's the desired decrypted file 2, and that would also give us the pseudo key. Okay, if we had that file, we would be able to say E2 XOR D2, so that's that XOR that to get the pseudo key. Or we can do that XOR that to get the pseudo key. Those 2 things are the same, but they are only the same, okay, and this is the key to the logic that we are using here. They are only the same, they only have this signature that is the exact same signature if the key that was used to encrypt this file is the same as the key that was used to encrypt this file. So just to reiterate, this only works if the key is the same, and what I mean by that is if you have the regular file, the source file, the video, essentially, of file 1, and you encrypt it with the key, let's say, melon, so source file encrypted with key melon, that would give you your encrypted file 1, and then if you decrypted it with the melon key, that would give you your decrypted file 1. If, and only if, encrypted file 2 also used that same keyword, melon, to go from being the regular video to the encrypted version, only then would this hold, would this be true. If you have E1 here, which has been encrypted with the keyword melon, and you XOR it with the decrypted version, it gives you a pseudo key which has the signature of melon. So it's not just any old key, it's not a generic key, it has the melon signature. It has things from melon that make it unique. But similarly, if you have this file here, encrypted file 2, that has also been encrypted with the word melon, and that's what that file has been encrypted using, then if you XOR that file with its decrypted version, you would also get the same pseudo key, melon. This is because the pseudo key will always have the melon signature if you are XORing something that is an encrypted version of it with that key, and the decrypted version of it with that same key. So you can encrypt with the word melon, decrypt with the word melon, and so the pseudo key has the signature of melon. Similarly, if you encrypt with the word melon and decrypt with the word melon, your pseudo key from this Zoring process will have the signature of melon. Now then, the thing to remember is that we don't have D2. This file does not exist in the memory. It's never in the memory, so we can't just save it and have the decrypted version. It doesn't exist for us, and so we're stuck. We have nowhere to go. But wait, we do have somewhere to go because of the exploits that you can use within the XOR function. Remember what I said earlier about 9 XOR 3 giving you 10? And so you've got these 3 numbers here, and you can go backwards in the process. 9 XOR 3 gives you 10, so 10 XOR 9 will give you 3. Sorted. Obviously, these are the decimal representations of those numbers. We are going to use this same logic with this pseudo key we've generated to go backwards and get to the desired decrypted file. I think the best way to visualize this is to think about it in the way that we thought about it before. So before, we said 9 XOR 3 equals 10. Here, I'm saying E1, the encrypted file, XOR D1, the decrypted file, gives us the pseudo key P. Okay, so E1 XOR D1, that's E1 XOR D1, gives us the pseudo key. However, remember I said before that E2 XOR D2 would also give us P. Okay, so that's E2 XOR D2 giving us the same P. If and only if they use the same key for encryption and decryption across both of the encrypted files. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, here we went 9 XOR 3, which gave us 10, and then we put 10 in at the beginning and said 10 XOR 9, that's the first thing we used, in order to get 3, which was in the middle. Here, we're going to say 9 XOR 3 gave us 10, and then we put that at the beginning. E1 XOR D1 gives us P, so let's put P at the beginning. Okay, now we could do P XOR E1 to get D1, for example. But that would give us something we've already got decrypted. So instead, we're going to use this handy trick. And the handy trick is that both of these, okay, give us P. So we could do P XOR E1 to get D1, or we could do P XOR E2 to get D2. That is the magic that is going on here. That is the beauty of this exploit of the XOR function, and that is why we are using it in order to do this decryption. So P here, XOR, which I'm going to write in red, P XOR E2 is going to give us the D2 desired file that we've been working towards this entire time. So by going E1 XOR D1 to get P, and then working backwards from P, but going along this path instead and saying P XOR E2 gives us the desired value, that gives us the decrypted desired value we've been looking for, but not able to find in the game's memory. I've really put my teacher hat on right now and tried to make that as clear as I possibly could. If you don't follow, that's fine. I'll try and help out in the comment section a little bit. I'm sure a lot of people that are also watching this video will be happy to help out as well, so go ask some questions and hopefully we can all understand this and learn about it together. I didn't know what the hell this was until today. I did some reading, I spoke to my brother, I spoke to Porter, I spoke to 1 or 2 other people, and now I understand the process just a little bit. Hopefully I'm helping you guys understand. I now need to say a few things about when this doesn't work, okay? If you can't get one of the files from the game's memory in its decrypted form, then you cannot do this process. You cannot do E1 XOR D1, because you don't have D1. It doesn't exist, so you can't get the pseudo key. You failed. If also you don't have 2 encrypted files like this, you've just got 1 encrypted file on its own, and you've got nothing else that uses the same key, then you've also failed, because this entire process relies on the fact that this E1 XOR D1 gives us P with the signature melon, and E2 XOR D2 also gives us the signature melon, just because of the fact that melon was used across both of these. And that's the only reason why we are able to go E1 XOR D1 equals P, and then instead of going P XOR E1 equals D1 or something like that, we can switch to say P is also able to be used for P XOR E2 to get D2. And that's what we did here. P XOR E2 gets us our desired output values. You've got to have the same key both times, and you've got to have one of them dumped. Thankfully, Treyarch were a little bit lazy, weirdly, because there's 6 encrypted files, like I talked about, 2 MKVs, 4 SABS files, but there are only 3 keys, which means that they have to reuse some of those keys multiple times. And what we've seen here is the key being reused multiple times, and we have exploited it to our advantage. At the beginning of the video, I mentioned that Porter hadn't got into the full file itself. He hadn't played the file, he only had a little chunk of it. And that's because this desired red thing that I've written down here is restricted. The reason it's restricted in this case is that Porter had limited options when he was looking for 2 files that shared the same key. He had, obviously, the mystery MKV that we wanted to get some info about, and he had to find another file that also had the same key that that first video used. And so he searched through the encrypted files in the game, and he found one that was 2,000 bytes long. So E2 is the encrypted file he's trying to decrypt, and E1 is this 2,000 byte file. The game also loaded that 2,000 byte file into memory, thankfully, and so that means that we had this, the dumped decrypted version of file 1, that was also 2,000 bytes long. So this process here, E1 XOR D1, results in a P, a pseudo key, that is 2,000 bytes long. That means that when we then reverse the process and we start with P and we go backwards, except this time using E2 and D2, we end up with P, which is 2,000 bytes long, affecting the first 2,000 bytes of E2, so the first 2,000 bytes of the encrypted file get decrypted, so we get our desired decrypted for the first 2,000 bytes, but then we run out of P. And so at that point, the rest of the file stays decrypted and stays garbage. So that's why Porter can only get the first little bit of the file and can't get the full thing. Certainly not yet. He's going to try working on it, but right now he can only work with the pseudo keys. Even just having the keys themselves in plaintext or whatever, or in base64 as they're going to be in the actual game's memory when the game is running, those keys are somewhat useless right now just because of the complexities of the situation. We need to know how Treyarch are repeating the key when they apply it and things like that, and the kind of seed of the key almost to see what the pattern is of that repetition. A load of confusing stuff that Porter is going to be working on, but for now, we are limited by the fact that we have a file here that is 2,000 bytes long, and so we can only decrypt here the first 2,000 bytes of the encrypted file and get 2,000 decrypted bytes. Thankfully, we have enough data in this decrypted desired file that we can compare it with other files from the Black Ops 3 game files and determine whether it's the same as any of them or different to any of them. It turns out that if we look at the decrypted results, so that's the first part of this file, this first little chunk of it that we've managed to decrypt thanks to the key being of that length, then what we find is the beginning of the file perfectly matches the same beginning of the file of the Shadows of Evil intro cutscene. All the metadata is the same. So you've got things like the time of creation written there in the data of the file. It's part of the metadata. And the time of creation is the exact same. The length of the file is the exact same. The resolution, the way it was encoded, the way that they did the actual video properties when they were rendering the video itself is all mentioned in the metadata at the beginning of the file, and the metadata that we've decrypted and the metadata of the Shadows of Evil intro cutscene, which is a separate file in the Black Ops 3 files, is identical. They are identical to one another. So it is a logical result to say that the decrypted file and the Shadows intro are the exact same. They're the same file size, that we can actually see without doing any decryption, and it seems like they are identical files. One of them is encrypted, one of them is not. The reason the file size doesn't change when it's encrypted is that the XOR function that we used back here is a bit shift. So it's not actually adding or taking away any data, it's just changing the value of all the little bits of data that make up the file. So what I'm now going to do is talk to Porter, and I'll show you a few things. I'll show you the game files that we've decrypted, I'll show you his program that he wrote specifically for this video. He didn't have to do this, he just offered to sit down and write a fully commented program so that you guys could see a rough idea of how it would all work if you were to write a program that could do all of this XORing. So that's going to be linked in the description, like I said, but he's going to walk you through it now, and there'll be a few other tidbits in there to hopefully clear things up here. Thank you for watching so far, guys. Stick with it, there's more to come. Here we go. Okie dokie. Now we're going to walk in. We're going to walk into. Okie dokie. Now we are going to walk through Porter's program, who I've actually got on the line here. Say hi, Porter.
Hey guys, what's going on?
There he is. So we're going to walk through his program really slowly so that you guys can hopefully get an idea of exactly how it works programmatically, and you can see that there's been no lying going on here, and everything is as it should be. Okay, so Porter, walk us through exactly how this works. Nice and slowly, okay? Keep it nice and slow.
Okay, so we're going to start off here. We have two encrypted files, and just for the sake of, tying it to the game, we're going to call the first file encrypted file 1.
Yep.
And that's going to be, let's just say it's one of the SABL files that is a part of the game. Now, these are always loaded in the game, in its memory, and you can essentially dump that because it is decrypted when it's loaded, or they wouldn't be able to play it.
Okay.
And then we're going to take our second file, our encrypted file 2, which this one in this case is going to be a SAB-S file, which is actually, it's read from the disk instead, so it's not decrypted. We don't have access to it right now. So I went ahead and I took, we have our 3 examples here. Actually, I can show you them.
What he has done is he has specified elsewhere that there are these files that exist. One of them contains a little bit of text saying like hello Milo or something, and the other says something like what is good. So we've got 2 files with text, and then in HXD, which he just showed you, one of those was the dumped version, so that's what you'd get from the memory, the decrypted version, dumped, so you can see the text, and the other 2 are the encrypted versions, and that's why they looked like garbage in HXD. So you can see there, on the right side, that's garbage, but the decrypted version, which is the dumped version from the memory, is readable, hello, what is good. So that's what we're working with to start off. Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, so essentially, what we are going to now do is, going back to how we discussed about XORing, we are going to XOR the encrypted file 1. So this file right here, we're going to XOR its encrypted version against the decrypted part of it that I took from memory. And that's going to give us what we call a pseudo key. So it's not necessarily the key they use to initially decrypt the file, or it may not even in this case be the key we're looking for. We don't know yet, but we can try this key against any other encrypted file and check its output. So we're going to go ahead right here, and actually it XORs the encrypted file 1 against decrypted file 2, and then we have pseudo key. In this case, our pseudo key's length is going to be 15 bytes long.
Cool.
It's going to be exactly as long as the decrypted dump or the encrypted file, since when you XOR a file, its file size does not change. Yeah. You will always have this, your encrypted and decrypted version will be the same size.
Yes, sir.
So going down from this, we're now going to, just for the sake of it, in the case that Treyarch or someone else had used the same key on 2 separate files, we can then go ahead and say, okay, because of the properties of a XOR, we can then take encrypted file 2, XOR it against our pseudo key, and then get the result back as a partially decrypted version of encrypted file 2. Now, you can only recover as many bytes as you have in your pseudo key. So in our case, our pseudo key was 15 bytes long. In our decrypted file 2, the message is actually only 11 bytes. So in this case, we will be able to recover the entire message without having the original key that they used to decrypt the file or encrypt it in the first place.
Right.
Exactly. So we're going to go ahead here, and just for the sake of this, I will run the program, and it's going to, at the bottom, output the result of the encrypted file 2. So this is essentially going to give us, I haven't showed you the message here, it is still stored in encrypted file 2. We are going to, once again, XOR encrypted file 1 against decrypted file 1, and then take that pseudo key and XOR it against our encrypted file 2, and hope that we get lucky.
Yes.
So I'm going to go ahead, run the program, and it's going to actually output the string of encrypted file 2. So that string happened to be, hi there, Milo. Completely different set of data. In this case, these two encrypted files were encrypted with the same key, and it just so happened that in our second case, the file that we didn't have a dump of in memory, because let's say this was a sound file and it was streamed, we could recover up to, in this case, 15 bytes of it, which led us to get the message, hi there, Milo.
Perfect. So in this case, we've just used some example text, and that's fine. But with the case of the game, it's a little different, because that encrypted file 2 was this mystery cutscene, the genesis.mkv. That's what we were hoping was using the same key as some of the other encrypted files, and the output will... Can we show you? Can we show them? Is that something we can do?
Yeah, we can show the beginning segments of the file. So
Awesome.
This was the decrypted segment
Okay.
that we were able to get out.
So this is the actual output, the decrypted output that you get from this process. So this is not the entire file. What we've got here is only as long as the pseudo key was for us. So as you can see, there's a bunch of, I guess, data in there, looking fairly interesting. Do you want to go ahead and walk us through what this actually is, Porter?
Okay, so this is a standard MKV file. In the header, they assume this is always the same. This will never change. So you can't really compare this initial segment, but this strand of bytes here and the second strand indicates either file size or the actual length of the movie, which is a huge indicator. Even if you weren't even looking at the bytes of the file being the same, the time alone, which affects, resolution, like for the bytes and all that stuff are there. It was like it was encoded the same way.
And I mean, just the fact that you've got all of this text, like creation timed, you got a time, language, handler name, main concept, all of these things are real words. So clearly this has been decrypted and is actually visible. Now, if we compare those real words to the real words that we see if we look into the Shadows of Evil intro file, which is also in that folder, remember those files were both in the video folder in the Black Ops 3 directory, what we find is that they are a perfect match. 100% up to the point where the pseudo key ends and then we have no more decrypted data. So let's take a look at that now. Let's go to like the same place and just sort of compare them.
So okay, this is the beginning of the file. So like I said, if you look in any of the other MKVs, you'll notice several of these variables at the top will change.
Yes.
Because they are either varying in length, varying in resolution, varying in content. But in the case that we have, these two MKVs start exactly the same, have the same what we call metadata for the video.
So let's show them like a comparison of some of those actual sort of English words, like the language, just to show that they're in the exact same place, that it's definitely identical. Just like let's try and do that.
Okay, so here is
perfect.
major and minor. This is actually the library that they use to encode the MKV. Creation time is right here. It was literally created at the exact same time.
There you go.
They used H.264 to encode the video itself. Exact same encoder settings. Same time. Same set time at the beginning of the file, which we did show earlier.
Yep.
Which again verifies, even if you weren't looking at the size of them in bytes, that they are the same length, regardless of how much of the video file we could actually decode.
Yes, so let's go to the end and let's just show that real quick, that ending. So
essentially,
yes.
yeah. So I mean, right here is where essentially we cut off with our pseudo key. Again, going with the example we had at the beginning, in our case with this short example, we only had a 15-byte pseudo key.
Yeah.
So we could only take 15 bytes of any other file that was encrypted using the same key and turn it back into like what it originally was.
Right. And so here for us in the decrypted segment that we're looking at, that's where our amount of decryption ends. And in the Zod loading movie one, the actual one, if we go to that same place in the HXD tab, you'll see that it continues on from there because obviously there's the rest of the data in the file that you can look at. So that is as much of the data as we have, but just from the fact that the date of creation, the time of creation, the millisecond of creation is the exact same in the metadata. The length of the file is the exact same in the metadata. The number of bytes in the file, the number of kilobytes, like I said before, the size of the file is the exact same. And also, if you compare it to, for example, the giant one, here, as you can see, we've got the factory loading movie, so that's the intro for the giant, and I mean, if you compare its data to the other data in the files, you see that there are differences. So you look, for example, on that fourth line, you can see that there's a little squiggle in one. If you go to the other file, you can see that that's not there, so there are differences clearly, and so this should be all the evidence you need, really, to see that different MKVs have different metadata in them, but in the case of two MKVs being identical, the metadata is the same, and in this particular case, we have two files with the same metadata. Genesis.mkv and the Shadows of Evil intro. So they are the same video.
The only other thing I can say is we are working on being able to either rebuild the original keys, get all of the sound files. We will be able to at some point. We haven't had enough time. I mean, it's only been out for a couple of days now. Yeah. So we're working on it. We'll try to get as much coverage as we can. And if we find anything else interesting, we'll, of course, Milo will probably make a video on it.
You got me. I guess my closing thoughts on this are that there could still be a super Easter egg. Remember, it's just that this file is not related to the super Easter egg. It could be patched in the future, and if it is, then we've got these original files, so we'll be able to compare. We've got like MD5s of them and stuff, so we'll be able to check if they've been changed in any way, but
exactly, it could be a placeholder.
Right, yeah, they could be using this as a placeholder for the future. They could patch something in, we don't know, but for now, this file is just the Shadows cutscene, but there could still be a super Easter egg, okay? Also, the quotes that we heard earlier, we haven't heard before. They're totally new, so clearly just want to reiterate that the decryption method works, and we should definitely investigate those soon. I'll make a video on them nice and soon, don't you worry. And ultimately, the final message I want to give you guys here is that whoever or whatever you believe, please do not witch hunt anybody. Sure, you might think that I'm lying in this video, or that Porter is lying, and that we've spoofed this, and it's all a big ruse for whatever reason. I don't know why I would do that. I'm just trying to help, but you might think that that's the case. That's okay. You're entitled to your opinion. I don't mind. Go for it, bud. The only thing I'll say is that if you then start trying to create conflict and witch hunting people and just generally sort of creating a very negative atmosphere, it's not going to get the community anywhere. Let's work together, guys, and celebrate the swan song of Black Ops 3 Zombies and really make the most of these last couple of weeks, I guess, that we have together before things really change for Infinite Warfare Zombies, because people will come and people will go. And this is, in many ways, the end of an era, and I think we should be making the most of it. So that's the final thing I wanted to say. Keep your discussion respectful. Please, even if you disagree or you think someone's wrong, it's worth doing for the good of all, for the good of the children. So, thank you for watching, guys. I've been Mr. Waffles. Hopefully this has been an informative and useful video for all of you. If it has been, leave a like, that would be great. I'll have a paste bin of Porter's actual program, the example one, not the other one that he used, but the example, so that you can see exactly what is doing what, and you can walk through it yourself if you want to. That will be in the description down below. And yeah, hopefully this has been helpful for you guys. I'm Mr. Waffles. I'll see you next time. Porter say bye-bye?
See you later, guys.
Bye-bye.